everyone, to a beautiful morning, finally, for Dawn at Oaklawn. This is one of my favorite parts of my job. I love to sit down and interview people and learn more about them. I feel like I know quite a bit about our track announcer, Matt Dinerman, but I wanted today to do a little bit of a deeper dive into who Matt really is.
Who am I? I'm Matt Dinnerman.
High on top of the Oaklawn grandstand.
Well, that's the thing, too, is as announcers, we're sort of the voice in the sky, right? And people don't really get to know us for who we are other than our voice in horse racing. And, you know, before I was a horse racing guy, I was Matt, the baseball guy. So
Yes.
there's a story to how things come about. And we're multidimensional, us announcers. People just don't know it.
So Matt has had the honor of just in how many years have you been on a mic, Matt? Since
This is my 10th
Emerald?
year, so
10th
about a
year.
decade. Crazy.
So it's amazing that in Matt's, this is the 10th.
Yeah, this is
So
the 10th
in Matt's
year.
9th year as an announcer, he had the honor of calling not only the Kentucky Oaks, but the Kentucky Derby winner on the same in the same season. So was that kind of after it all happened, did you realize that's a big deal?
Absolutely. You know, when you train to be an announcer, you want to call horses like that. That's what you train for. So there were a couple of races last year that really, it came full circle. It sort of hit you based on the horses you're calling. Like, wow, I've made it to a grade A track. And thinking about Mystic Dan, Torpedo Anna, calling Idiomatic at Monmouth Park. You know, she was an Eclipse champion and a Breeders' Cup champion. Those types of horses, that's what you train to do when you're training to be an announcer. Those are the types of horses you want to call. So it's quite the feeling to know that you were able to call a horse that's gone on to be in the history books.
So obviously Matt is a track announcer, but you were a fan first. And I think that's really important for anybody that gets in the horse racing industry, because it does allow you that level of respect, that level of passion, and that level of curiosity as well.
Well, I think that we all have to be a fan of the game to really be invested in it heavily. And it's not like stocks, you know, where you buy a stock and you're not thinking about the company. If you buy a stock in Amazon, you're not thinking about being a fan of Amazon or every day looking up facts about Amazon. But in horse racing, you actually, if you really want to be a fan, you need to be a hardcore fan. If you really want to be a lifelong fan, there's this, for lack of a better term, addiction to the horses and the thrill of winning and the thrill of the crowd and the pageantry. So once you get bit by the bug, it's hard to find anything that it's hard to find anything that'll replace it. It's just the sport
Nothing rivals it.
No,
so to speak. So we mentioned, are there any, obviously Mystic Dan, Torpedo Anna, are there any race calls that you did last year that really stand out? Because after, you know, people say, well, what do you do when the season's over? Matt went to the Jersey Shore, literally, and called Monmouth. So you got to see some great horses there as well. Was there maybe one race in particular that stood out to you that thought, man, I nailed it?
I think when Idiomatic won the Molly Pitcher, and she was head and head with Soul of an Angel and at Monmouth anyway, and that ended up being an amazing race. Not only was it a great stretch run, but Soul of an Angel went on to win the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Sprint. So looking back on it, I remember after the race saying that was a great stretch run. That was the type of race that any racing fan would get goosebumps over.
Right.
But then you look down the line and you realize as you go further down the line and you look back, you know, you've got two Breeders' Cup winners going at it. And I remember calling the race, and one of the great things about calling races is the art of it, and I think all great race callers see it as an art, and it involves processing what's happening and describing it in a way that fits the moment. And it looked like Soul of an Angel was in a big shot to upset Idiomatic, who was the heavy favorite in the race, and then Idiomatic came back, and I was able to say, it just came in my head, she's showing why she's a champion. And I remember just listening to that and saying, you know what, not trying to fancy my work or myself too much, but that was sort of the perfect way to describe a champion. And being able to call those races, those horses, it's really thrilling, you know, and I actually was looking it up last night about post-performance crash. I didn't know what it was, and it's when you have a big performance, whether it's an athlete or a performer, and then you get home and everything sort of drops down. And that happened after that day, Haskell Day, after Arkansas Derby Day, after Rebel Day, you know. So, but it's just part of the gig, and those are the types of races that's why I love doing what I do.
So I know, having worked with a lot of track announcers, sometimes if there's a key race or a key horse, they might have like a catchphrase that they'll want to use as they come down the stretch, should it go in that horse's favor. But you tend to lean on more of an improvisational aspect of it. Do you sometimes think, well, if this horse wins, this is what I want to say?
I try not to, because I think it all comes back to the art of race calling. For me personally, it's Robert Geller, he called it Woodbine, or he calls it Woodbine.
Great guy.
Great guy. He's a mentor of mine, a really dear friend. And him, Trevor Dinman, are two of my mentors. I have quite a few, but they're two of the mentors that gave me as much advice as anybody. And one of the things Robert told me when I was at Emerald, my first job, Emerald Downs, was, you know, a great race caller will see the race, and the race will give you what it needs, and then you provide it to the public. And that's how I feel my best calls have come through. When you're training to be an announcer, it's all trial and error. One of the reasons it's so hard to be an announcer is because you have to make your own style. You can get tips, but you have to figure out what works for you. And there's no right or wrong way to do something. It's just what works for you. And early on in the process, I tried scripting. It just didn't work for me. It didn't sound original. It didn't sound natural. And I said, you know what? I think going back to Robert's stance of just let the race tell you what it needs and then provide it. And going back to that idiomatic call, that is what's most fulfilling, is when you feel that you've been able to describe it properly by simply letting the race tell you what it needs, and it becomes a natural reaction, or thinking out loud, as I like to call it,
Very
calling
organic,
the race.
so to speak.
Yes.
So I like how you said, let the race tell you. A lot of times as an interviewer, you know, you'll ask the follow-up question of, you know, as an interviewer what race is next in a series, but a lot of times, 9 times out of 10, the trainer will say, we'll let the horse tell us.
Right.
And 30 years ago, I thought, well, how the heck is the horse going to tell you? But now I know that the horse, it's the way they train up to it. It's the way they perform. It's the way they eat. It's how they come out of that race. But it's kind of like the same thing like you're talking about. It's organic. It has to come naturally.
And I think that's when the best race calls are produced. And Trevor Denman was another mentor of mine. He never scripts anything. And for example, Tom Durkin, he was known to script. Larry Colmus has said publicly that he scripts. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's how it works best for them. For me, it just never came out, or it didn't feel natural to me, and I didn't think it sounded natural. So that's one of the cool things about race calling. The art of it is, it's like music. People have different ways of going about it. Doesn't mean one style's better than the other.
Right.
I look at it like the Food Channel, where the judges are sitting there judging the food, and it's like, well, I love this dish, and the next judge is like, I think there's a little too much salt here, you know, and the next one's like, you know what, I don't think there's that much salt at all. Like, it's all just a style preference.
I like that. What's your most favorite part about your job?
I would say, honestly, the most favorite part about my job is meeting so many different people from different places. I love calling races, obviously, and there's an adrenaline rush of every race that I call, no matter if it's a close finish, not. But with this job and being an ambassador for the racetrack, for the business, you get to meet so many different people from different walks of life, and you get to learn a lot about different cultures and different people, and it's fascinating to me how people get involved in racing, because there's so many avenues that people have taken, an infinite amount of avenues for all of us to be a hub here at the racetrack for the sport that we love. So I'm a very people person type of guy, so I love meeting new people, and I've gotten to meet a lot of new people.
I bet, because like, especially when you come to Oaklawn, you go to a restaurant in Hot Springs, there's racing on. There's win pictures on the wall. And when people are talking at the bar about what they played that day, how much they won, how much they donated back to the track. And you're a very familiar face. So when you go out to these places, do they acknowledge you, or are people just kind of, oh, he's Matt Dinerman, that's the track announcer?
I think a combination of things. I call it the stare. There's this stare that
Like,
people
I
give
know
me.
that guy.
Yeah, like they do a double take, and you can tell. And I don't stare at them or anything. We keep going. But if people want to come up and ask for an autograph or take a selfie or just talk to me about racing, I love doing it. And it's funny how it works because sometimes I go to a restaurant and I'm just able to eat no problem without anybody coming up to me. Not that I wouldn't want them to come up to me, but it's very quiet, so to
Right.
speak. And then there are other times I'll go to a restaurant and there'll be a half dozen people that'll come up on the same
Right.
night. So I enjoy it. It's fun. Like I said, just meeting new people, and it's very kind to hear people say that they enjoy your work and
It
they
is.
know who you are. It gives you that extra verve to want to do a good job for people, because at the end of the day, calling races is, for me, number one, it's hospitality. That's how I look at it.
It's a
I see my
great way to
job
look at it.
100% as hospitality, and I'm not the show. The horses and the jockeys are, the races are, the pageantry, but a good announcer can help make the experience better, enhance the experience. So that's what I
love
try
that.
to do.
That's very true to form. So that's your most favorite thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you could change anything about your job, I mean, you're kind of limited in what it's certainly a special skill, but if there was one thing you could change, what do you think that would be?
That's a tough one because I love my job a lot. One, I would say I could go to the paddock more. So Jason Milligan,
got
if you're
you.
listening to this, let me go to the paddock a little. No, I do that. Well, I guess this is a legit answer. There are times where I'm up there and I wish I could be amongst the people a little
Got you.
more. It's a pretty isolating
You're
experience.
a people person for sure.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. I feel like I'm something called an ambivert, which is essentially there's an introverted side to me.
Okay.
But it's both introverted and extroverted. Like I can get introverted in certain aspects of my life,
Right.
but I'm very much a people person. But I would love to have a little more interaction when you're up there by yourself for hours.
Yeah.
And sometimes people come and visit, and people come and watch the races, and they want to get a view from up there, and I have them up there as guests. It's a great thing. And but if it's days alone where it's very isolated, there are pros and cons to that, So
So do you want me to start sending more people up to see you?
yeah, sure. I'm happy to have visitors for sure. And the thing is, they get to see the ducks. We give them the whole experience.
Explain the ducks, because he added 2 to the collection yesterday, and 1 came from a celebrity.
Yes, Coach Al Golden, who is the defensive coordinator now for the Cincinnati Bengals, sent me a Cincinnati Bengals.
Award winner.
The
I mean,
Broyles
that's
Award
a
winner.
big deal.
Oh, for sure it is, and he's a very successful man and has gone on to be very successful in his field. I started picking up rubber ducks when I'd go bowling at Emerald Downs 9-10 years ago, and
He does not own a Jeep. I just
I
want to
do not own
clarify
a
that.
Jeep.
He is not a Jeep owner.
And I don't have any ducks on the dashboard. I think that's by design to sort of change things up. But I picked up about 20 of them, and I had all these ducks, and I didn't know what to do with them. So eventually I thought about John G. Dooley, Don Stevens, Michael Chamberlain. They all call races in the Midwest, and they'd go on TV and they'd have these bobbleheads on their desk. And I always thought that was cool. And my booth was very plain and bland, and I felt, well, maybe if I put these ducks in the booth, that'd be sort of cool.
I like that.
So I took a picture, posted on social media, and just said, hey, I got some new friends in the booth with me. And next thing you know, I started getting ducks in the mail, and people started giving it to me.
It has spiraled into Duckamania, because what
That's a great phrase.
It seriously is
Duckamania.
Duckamania. You're almost 300 in? Or
Yeah,
you over
almost.
that?
I'm 280 to 290.
I mean,
don't
it's
know
everything from the little bitty tiniest little ducklings to these massive,
Right.
like almost inflatable rubber duckies. Is there a lineup? Are they lined up specifically? I've always wondered that. Is like order of chronological order or size or importance or?
So there are certain ones that are. There are certain ducks that I put on my desk that symbolize something. A lot of ducks symbolize things, but ones that are meaningful to me, they're also paired in like size. So
Got you.
you know, there are certain duck sizes that fit together. But for example, Golden Gate Field's the last track I call that. The racing office and racing officials got me a pretty sizable duck and signed it and wished me
Oh, I
luck
love
coming
that.
to Oaklawn. So, for example, a duck like that, and along with it came a little duck, a brown horse duck that had Oaklawn and a little microphone on it.
So cute.
The Golden Gate folks, you know, I was there for a long time, met a lot of great people. So ducks like that stay with me on the desk as a reminder of those folks and the memories and the things I learned at Golden Gate. So there's certain ducks that are in certain positions, but then there are others that are sort of spread out. And you know, I always say it really doesn't have that much to do with me. I'm the one that houses the ducks. It's the
You're
people
the duck master.
I'm the duck master, and
I
it's
like
the
that.
the fans that made that what it is, not me.
So one thing that Matt says at least 10 times a day is about Thoroughbred aftercare.
Yes.
And I've mentioned it in the backside. I mentioned, you know, obviously we have the bell, the equicizer. And Thoroughbred aftercare is very important, and it's important to you as well. Talk a little bit about the meaning of our aftercare program.
Well, it's very important. The Ring the Bell program, of course, every time our Winning Connections ring the bell, they've donated to the Arkansas Thoroughbred Retirement and Rehabilitation Foundation. I've said it so much. Ron Moquette, he gave me a script, and I tossed it last year. I don't need a script.
Like, I know what I'm doing.
I
This
know
is
the
my
drill.
gig, Ron. Let me
I know
do
that.
it.
I think I talk about that more than anything, including the actual races themselves, because we mention it every race, which is a great thing, by the way.
It is a great thing.
At this point, pretty much every race the bell's rung, which is fantastic. But here at Oaklawn and in the state of Arkansas, we want to make sure that after our racehorses are finished, that we give them a good home.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, humans are the ones taking care of the horses. The horses in the stable area, they can't feed themselves. We got to put the feed in their bucket. We got to bathe them.
Right.
We got to make their coats look shiny. And there's so much work that goes into making sure these horses are healthy. But it doesn't stop after the racing side of things. When they're done, it's time to find them a good home or a good second career. We see show jumpers, hunters, maybe horses shipped to a little girl to ride around in the field. So with that in mind, there's obviously a lot of money in horse racing. We see how much
They're
money.
not cheap even to take care of
No.
after their racing days are over.
There's so much money in horse racing, and there's a lot of people with a lot of money.
Yes, there are.
So with that in mind, if we want to put up that type of money for the show, it very much is the only right thing to do is to put up extra money to make sure that these horses are cared for, because at the end of the day, everything we have, for example, everything the trainers and the jockeys have, it's because of the horses, and I say the horses and the customers. The bettors, we need bettors.
Yes.
If we don't have the fuel.
We need everybody here.
If we don't have the fuel for the car is not going to run.
Right.
But at the same time, we also need the horses, and all they do is go out and try for us on the racetrack, and they give us so much joy and so much love, and it would be a 100% wrong thing to do to not care after they race. We need to care for them their entire lives and make sure that they're happy and healthy.
Now, one thing that Matt is vocal on is social media.
Yes.
Me, not so much.
I understand why,
But
too.
why is that?
It's a polarizing place.
And
to
you
say
can
the
go down a
least.
rabbit hole
Sure.
on social media, and it just, but I want to acknowledge you because, and praise you because you did something that was probably not the easiest to do. You, during OCD Awareness Month, came out and spoke that you were diagnosed with OCD, and that's why you have maybe some of the isms or the quirks that you do. What was so important for you to tell your story?
Well, I think OCD is a very misdiagnosed, not misdiagnosed, it's a misunderstood scenario. There was a time in my life at Golden Gate during the COVID pandemic where things just didn't seem quite right. And I realized so much about myself being diagnosed and understanding so much more about myself that I didn't even understand. I didn't understand myself nearly as much as I thought I did, really. And I figured, well, if I didn't understand myself and the way my brain's wired, then how would other people understand it? So I was meeting people with the same deal. I mean, 1% of the world's population has it. So is it rare? Yes. Is it that rare? Not really. I mean, you're going to meet people that have it. This is not something to be embarrassed about. And especially nowadays with mental health in the forefront. I would think about Kyle Fraze, a jockey that I knew from California, and he was very open about other struggles that he had. I think it's very important to share the fact that we're different, where everybody's different in their own way, and there's good that comes out of that, because it's just, that's who I am. And I think I'm a good person because of it. I think the way I think is part of the reason that I do so good up there. And I just think it's really important, especially nowadays with COVID and social media and all these social things that are coming to the forefront about mental health. I think it's really important to understand that there are obstacles that everybody has to overcome.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that you can't get to the top of the mountain. And certainly, I think that if my brain was not wired the way it is, I wouldn't be as good at doing that.
And again, I want to praise you, because people on social media can be absolutely critical. They can be hateful. They can be judgmental. But I think you got a lot of praise for coming out. And and I saw your video. I rewatched it this morning, and you don't have to turn a light switch on 3 or 4 times.
No.
There's so many different realms of OCD, and I think that does make you that much better at your job, because the recall that this man has is unbelievable. We'll be sitting on the desk doing Oaklawn today, and he'll reference a horse 3 weeks ago, what they breezed in. I don't have that recall. So kudos to you. Maybe it's the female brain. Or it's my brain. It's not the female brain. But kudos to you. And you also talk about being successful and how to reach your goals, because you've reached some very, very big goals, and to be at an A track in just 33 years old.
32.
32. I'm sorry, I aged you.
Same thing.
Still old enough to be your mom, but I'm kind of like the work mom of the
you
bunch.
You're the mother hen. We've talked with the social media
hen.
team and me, and you took me in like I was one of your own, and now here we are. So Nancy definitely was somebody who, when I got here, I was so excited to work with, because I knew Nancy through television and through the business, and it's been just a joy being your partner on air.
I think we have a great chemistry on air. I'm very thankful for that, because I think we have 2 different handicapping styles, and both work. I think both are successful. And because he just walks in with I've got notes and highlights, and Mac just walks in, opens up the form, and just goes. Maybe that's the way his brain works. Mine, unfortunately, does not. But your recall, I am so enthralled by. Have you always had that kind of ability to, even when you were playing baseball, did you have that kind of ability?
I did, yeah. My brain was wired in the way that I was very much a visual learner. That's how I was as a youngster. I would always, for example, there's people that need to write things down for them to process something. Nancy,
this girl
there
right
you go.
here.
And we see Frank Miramati, who was here at Oaklawn Park for a couple of seasons, and he colors in his program.
A lot of announcers do. He had a special, I think it was 128 Crayola box.
Really,
of
that
crayons.
big?
It was like the biggest one that they made.
Actually, I'd find these crayons in the Golden Gate Fields booth, just like in between something. I'd be like, what? And then I realized that was Frank's crayons.
little gift behind from Frank.
Yeah. So, but for me, I'm a visual learner, so that doesn't work for me, and I couldn't draw a stick figure to save my life anyway. So it ended up working out just fine. But so I'm a visual learner, so I visually see something, and I'm pretty good at remembering that visual.
God, I'm so jealous of that.
Yeah.
So racing 3 days a week, that means you have 4 days off. That's a lot of downtime. What do you like to do when Matt Dinerman is not on a mic?
Well, I'm so much up in that room for so long, and you're in a room, so for that long, you want to get out and you want to do stuff. So I'm not somebody, I like being at home watching Netflix. That's something I enjoy doing.
Same.
I can be a homebody for sure.
I can.
But at the same time, I don't like to do it all the time, especially when I'm up there not moving around that much. So I took up golf a couple of years ago. For one, because it's good exercise. You're getting outside. Baseball players, a lot of ex-baseball players play golf as well, and still baseball players play golf. But also, it's a very good social avenue to meet people, and even if you know people, to get them out on the course and have a good time, and then afterwards have a beer, have dinner.
Yep.
So golf is something that I've taken up. I enjoy going to the gym. In the summertime, I like the beach. I like going to the beach. I'm a water person.
Oh, I like that. Well, being from San Diego, you're definitely a water person.
For sure. I did junior lifeguards for a number of years on the beach, and that was terrific. Just learned a lot about water safety, and I learned how to surf. So I haven't surfed in a while. I have a surfboard in San Diego. I didn't use it that much, but it's there. So I like doing things like that, and I'm also simple, though. Like, I really enjoy going out to eat and just having a good conversation with somebody, and it being actually like a true, helpful, in-depth conversation about whatever. I enjoy that.
Obviously, I like to get away from horse racing when I'm not here. I like to, have my mind control with other things. What kind of topics do you like to discuss? Is it art? Is it music? Is it movies? Is it politics?
Definitely not politics.
Agreed.
It's not something that I like to get involved in because I don't like arguments. I enjoy talking about, pretty much anything that comes to mind.
Current events, probably.
Yeah, music. I like music. Love music. I like different types of music. I like talking about like fun facts. I can't tell you how many times I've talked about like murder mystery things. I like watching murder mysteries on TV. So we've had all sorts of conversations about that along the way, and just anything you can think of. There's not like one specific thing. It's just wherever the wind blows, we go with
What
it.
are you Netflixing right now?
It's funny you're asking me that.
Mine's kind of embarrassing, so if you tell, I'll tell.
Mine's very. This is crazy that you asked me this question, because this is like the wildest
now
story.
The anticipation is killing me.
So there is a woman in Australia. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Belle.
Yeah, Belle.
Yes.
Belle. And Belle, which is this story is interesting because it actually talks a lot about social media and the problems with social media. It really highlights it. It's about this gal in Australia who basically came out and said she had brain cancer and was telling all these followers she gained popularity. She wrote a book, and she says, well, I'm going to eat really healthy organics, green juice, salads, all this stuff, and it has helped cure my cancer. Come to find out, of course, that she was lying about all this for God knows what reason.
She scammed the world, basically.
She scammed the world. The journalists are in the Netflix documentary that basically uncovered this falsehood, to say the least. And it's basically about not only the story, but I thought really diving into the documentary. I like looking at the sort of inner messages of things, because there always are in these documentaries, and it's really how harmful social media can be, because it's so much about being a highlight reel, that it's not realistic. And that's another thing that OCD, we talked about that, is being aware that OCD people can be very misunderstood, and just what you see on the surface, which is social media stuff, for everybody is not necessarily real life, and that how many followers you have. And I have a good following on social media, but that doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It doesn't.
It doesn't.
It doesn't
really
matter.
Doesn't.
It doesn't enhance me as a person. Some of the biggest compliments I've ever gotten are not "you're great at race calling" or "you're very smart." It's, hearing people say about other people saying about me, he's a really great guy, or he's really classy. Like, those are the compliments that really mean the most to me.
And they
I think
should.
That's the most important.
And they should. So you're watching the documentary. Have you watched the series?
Well, it's like a two-part.
Well,
deal.
this one is where an actress plays Belle.
Oh, boy.
It's good.
Is it on Netflix?
Yes.
Okay.
I watched that first and then watched the documentary.
It's hard for me not to get mad, like anybody, when you watch that. It's like,
See, that's not as embarrassing as what I'm watching.
Okay. Well, you have to tell us now.
Because I'm a sucker for just horrible reality TV. I'm watching Love is Blind season 6.
Okay.
I
That's
like
okay.
that kind
I
of
mean,
stuff. I mean,
well, look at like The Bachelor, and
yeah,
I'm
I can't
watching
do The
Survivor
Bachelor.
with my friend Cody.
What is it, like
every
season
week.
50 of
It's
Survivor?
like
Could you do
38.
Survivor?
No, I've told him that the problem is I get really hangry. So if I was on that island, I would be just not very.
You have mentioned being hangry a couple of
Yeah.
times. Should I start keeping snacks on the
I think that's
Oaklawn
a
today?
good idea.
I should probably keep snacks.
Last week, I get on the set and Nancy's like, "What's up, Matt?" And I'm just like, "I am not happy. I don't have my water with me. You could tell I was like in a.
You
mood.
like a controlled environment, but I think
I do, but I've gotten better at it.
okay.
Yeah, the last few years, as we mentioned about the other stuff, I've gotten a lot better at being spontaneous. Like with Emerald Downs, they called me up to call a race and to fly on the plane for the first time by myself. I'd never been on a plane by myself before. To be on the mic for the first time, there was a lot of anxiety. I would have these thoughts of like, what if I don't do well in this scenario? What if I can't call a race? And as I've moved around the country and met different people and seen different cultures, like I've learned, if you just get out of your comfort zone, you can do a lot more than you really would expect.
You surprise yourself a lot.
For sure.
What are 3 words, Matt, that you would use to describe yourself?
Happy. Happy, that's one thing for sure. Eccentric.
Okay.
Pretty eccentric. And helpful. I like to help people.
I like that. Very good 3 words. I like that. So Matt Dinnerman and I have become I like to call us a dynamic duo on Oaklawn today as we go through all the races on the Oaklawn card. That's been a really fun time getting to know you more as well. And we've gotten some really good feedback from our show, but you also have a podcast that you have kind of reinvigorated, so to speak.
Yeah, out of the starting gate. Well, we started it as the King's Court, which was a few of my buddies. Cody Cotto, who's a jockey agent here. Jose Santos Jr., also a jockey agent here. We're all buddies. We're around the same age. And we did something on YouTube along with a young guy named Jack Carlino, who's not in the business anymore, but he did the Godolphin Flying Start program, was the assistant for Michael McCarthy for a couple of years. We were on this sort of round table like show where we'd go over big races and give opinions. And when I got to Oaklawn, Ron Moquette had known the show because he watched it and he shared it a couple times when we were kids. And he knew Cody and Jose and Jack through Kentucky because they all went to Louisville at one point, the University of Louisville. And we thought about maybe bringing it back in some capacity, which has turned into Out of the Starting Gate, which we started 6 weeks ago. Our 6th episode just came out for the Rebel recap, and just having different guests and trying different things. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. And where can they find the podcast?
You can go on YouTube. Just go to Oaklawn's YouTube page and you'll find it. The real MVPs there though are Chelsea and Sophie, who are in the social media room there. The editing makes a whole big difference.
It does.
The graphics, they do a phenomenal job, and it's
nice.
really turned into a great product. And people have really caught on to it very quickly. We've gotten good viewership, and I think the whole thing, again, this job being about hospitality, for me, it's giving people another avenue to have a better experience watching our races and horse racing.
So one of my favorite parts of doing Oaklawn today with you is what's not on camera.
Yeah.
I guess I should say,
For sure.
because the banter, and it's so important to have that chemistry with somebody that you can joke around with, that you can banter back and forth. You and I were talking yesterday off air about a instance that has just come up in horse racing where an owner is suing the jockey and for pulling up, for not persevering, and they are suing this rider for the win amount, which is $46,000. That's a lot of change.
Yeah.
What kind of precedents do you think that sets?
I think it sets a bad precedent. I think it's a ridiculous thing to do, and I think it's a terrible thing to do, really. That's a very good question. When we're in this game and you're an owner, you hire a jockey to perform their best, and you want them to give the best effort. I've talked to so many trainers that say, at the end of the day, I'm looking for a great effort. And Ron Moquette actually brought something up that was really interesting. He says, if I don't get a good effort from a jockey, not only is maybe the horse not placing the way he or she should, but it's also not giving me an idea of their talent level,
Right.
of where they really need to be spotted. If I need to drop them, if maybe you're just not trying, knowing at the quarter
That's a
pole you're
great
done.
way to look at it.
I thought it was, when he said that, it was like the light bulb came on, like, wow, like I never thought of it that way. But
I mean,
that's very interesting.
horse racing is very individualistic,
Yeah.
but in the same manner, it's a team sport.
It is.
Because there's the hot walker, there's the groom, there's the exercise rider, there's the assistant, there's the vet, there's the trainer, there's everybody involved, and it is a team effort.
It
and
is.
especially when you get out there, those guys are riding with their family, so to
Sure.
speak.
I mean, their lives are on the line. And when we play horses, when we bet horses, as horse players, an infinite amount of things can happen in a race, factors. And yeah, you can't sit here and say that every single jockey in every single race for the history of time has tried their best every single race. I
Right.
can't sit here and say that that's the case, because that's not true. But you're also, with that in mind, think about, there was a lawsuit amongst the horse players, a core of horse players suing, I believe it was Bob Baffert, I think it
Yes.
was, who they were basically wanting their winnings back. And I think what the court ruled is essentially, when you're playing these races, you're basically, I'm not going to say giving up your rights, but what you're doing is you're understanding that an infinite amount of things can happen, and there could be some funky things in the way of you cashing in a bet. It's all simply just what happens on the track. It is what it
Right.
is. So I think that, I don't think this is a normal situation.
I don't think so
I
either.
don't think that owners are going to follow suit if for some crazy reason
Oh,
this
goodness, I hope
lawsuit
not,
goes in the
Matt.
way of the plaintiff, but I don't think it will. I think it's a ridiculous thing.
Maybe they'll go on the people's court.
That'd be cool.
That would be
like
really
Judge
cool.
Mathis or something.
Judge Mathis, or if they should
Yeah.
imagine if they went in front of Judge Judy.
I think Judge Judy would scowl the plaintiff, probably. That'd be my guess. You want to talk about someone who doesn't take no nonsense from anybody.
Yes.
And this seems like pretty much nonsense. But
Very much nonsense. Does anybody have any questions for Matt? Because this is your one opportunity to ask him something. But I do have one more question.
yes, I'm ready.
What's your top pick of the day?
Okay, can I get out my phone? 'Cause,
Yes.
I am somebody, but as
You
I get
handicap days in advance, do you not?
out, sometimes I do. Other times I do it the day before. It just depends. But one thing that I've taught my brain as I get the fields out here is I've taught myself to be very short-term memory because of the silks and the fact that they're different owners.
It's every 25 minutes, so to speak.
Exactly. So it's crazy. If you came upstairs for race 4 and said, who won the second race, I might not be able to tell you. And I don't know if that's just how my brain is wired, or if it's just I've taught myself you can't remember that stuff.
That's really interesting.
Because and it happened one time at Golden Gate, where I called this horse that had run an hour earlier, but he had the exact same silks on, and he lost by a nose. And I learned on the replay that I was calling the wrong horse. So
Do you watch your calls back?
I do.
You
I
do?
I
See-
like to, well, I don't like to hear myself all the time, really, but I do like to hear the pace. I like to hear if I'm saying things too repetitively, because you sound different, you know.
Ooh, maybe I should start watching myself, but
Yeah.
I cringe when I hear my own voice.
Yeah, it's hard.
It
It's
is.
hard. And then there are times where you think you're like, I don't like the way that sounded. And people come up to you, I love that call. And then there are other times where you don't think about it, and someone was like, you got a little bit too loud there. And it's like, I thought I was just fine. So like I said, it's like the Food Channel again, the judges. It's all just sort of, you know, whatever floats your boat, you know. I think I'll give you an exacta. How about that?
Okay.
That sounds like fun.
You're hearing it here first before Oaklawn today. What race are we talking
We're
about?
going to go to race 10, which is a full field, allowance horses, 4-year-olds and up going a mile. So we're giving you a good race. I think Lat Long, the favorite's going to be pretty tough in there, coming off a runner-up finish to Baddest Good Boy. And then I'm McDreamy, who's the clocker pick of the week on the Out of the
Ooh.
Starting Gate show. This horse bobbled terribly at the start, post 11 last time, lost all chance, made a big move on the turn, and then sort of flattened out. He gets a good trip. I think he's going to run a lot better, and he's training fantastic.
Okay.
You can go to oaklawn.com/racing/workouts to find all the workouts. Yeah, I've memorized that
I
link.
know you have.
I don't know how many times I've said that, but
A bunch.
but I will say too that when it comes to preparation, I do want to note this. I played baseball for 15 years, and I look at everything like an athlete's perspective because that's how I grew up.
Okay.
And preparing properly, doing the little things right is what's going to enhance the ability for me to do the best possible job up there, is by doing my homework, by not slacking off, by paying attention, doing all these little things right to paint the big picture of what we need to do. Because I always tell people, I say, you know, when a painter paints a picture, they're not thinking about painting a boat on the ocean with the sand right there, the shore. They're beginning with the mast of the boat. They're beginning with the intricacies of the blue water and the waves. And when they worry about all those little things, when they do their last touch, they look and it's there. So that's how
Very profound.
That's how I do everything in my life, is doing little things right. I remember there's this one jockey who wanted to vent to me about a couple things about his life, and we've become very close friends. And I said, you know, you look at your win percentage, you look at the money earned on Equibase, that's a big picture thing. Like, worry about getting to work on time and hustling barns and working hard. And if you need to lose a couple pounds, making sure you get in the hot box early, do it, and then take time to hydrate or stretch. Do all of these little things right. Look at the racing form. Do your homework. If you do all these little things right, you'll be fine.
The big picture is important, but what's underneath is even more so.
Yeah, because people are trying to get to the big picture before they do the little things to make the big picture what it is. If you just start drawing a boat, it's not going to come out as well. You talk to all these successful people. I think about athletes, again, Michael Jordan, Tony Gwynn. Tony Gwynn would go 1 for 4 in a game or 1 for 5. He was a very famous baseball player, and he'd be in the batting cage till 3 a.m. because that's not good enough.
I was a big fan of him.
You are Tony Gwynn?
Padres,
He was
absolutely.
awesome. He was awesome. And he actually coached at San Diego State after his baseball career. Never got to meet him. But so with all these things, you think about all the greatness in the world, all these people that have done great things, it's because of them doing the little things right to propel themselves to paint the big picture.
Well, as you can see, horses are coming back onto the track after the track renovation, and I want to thank our very own track announcer, Matt Dinnerman, for coming out this morning. I know you're not a morning person, so to speak, so this is
wide awake thanks to you guys.
This is very honored to have you and learn more about you.
Thank you.
It's a big honor.
It's been a pleasure
ladies and
being
gentlemen,
here, everybody.
track announcer, Matt Dinnerman.
Yeah, great to see everybody.
And I feel like I'm going to blow away. If you